He was a hard-working immigrant, striving for a better life.
He was just a hard-working individual, took care of his mom, took care of his family.
With a new wife and baby at home, all his hard work was worth it.
He'd literally break his back just to make ends meet, to make her happy. The sky was the limit.
But it all comes crashing down.
They shot the guy 3 times in his house.
He was bleeding out.
Was he an innocent victim of a violent neighborhood?
The crime rate was through the roof.
It might be a home invasion that went bad, so they don't really know what's going on.
The investigation will soon reveal a deadly web of deception.
We never knew anything. I couldn't believe it.
You have somebody who is highly motivated to lie because his very life depends on it.
February 24th, 2013. It's Sunday afternoon in Brooklyn's Brownsville neighborhood. But this struggling community is far from quiet.
There's a lot of robberies, a lot of drugs, a lot of gangs, probably the highest crime rate in New York City.
There were murders, shootings during the daytime. It was just not a very safe neighborhood.
This Sunday is no exception.
911 emergency.
The caller identifies herself as Alicia Noel Murray and says someone has shot her husband, Omar Murray.
She says that there were shots fired inside her residence.
After she heard the shots fired, she did go to the stairs to see what was going on. And she saw her husband's body laying downstairs in the foyer bleeding.
When the dispatcher asks Alicia if Omar is breathing, she isn't sure. She says she hid with the couple's baby after seeing Omar lying on the ground.
She locked herself in away from the front door because she wasn't sure if the person was coming up the steps.
She thinks somebody's in the house with a gun.
She was scared, and you heard every bit of that fear over that phone call.
Police race to the scene and arrive to find 37-year-old Omar Murray severely wounded.
They find our victim, Omar, lying with 3 gunshot wounds into his chest.
He was bleeding out.
In 1995, when 19-year-old Jamaican immigrant Omar Murray came to the U.S., he poured everything he had into building a better life for his family.
He was a very loving man, very giving, very thoughtful, very caring, humble, and ambitious. Like he wanted to do his best so he can support his family.
He was the oldest of his siblings, and he took care of his mom, took care of his family, just a hardworking individual.
He was an iron worker. Since he came to the States, he's been in the same line of work. Over 15 years he's been doing that job.
Omar also knew how to enjoy himself.
He was the life of the party. He was always such a warm individual, big smile.
When he shows up, it's like he just brightens up the room and he's always smiling, laughing, making jokes.
However, in 2007, hard times fell on Omar when he and his wife of 10 years decided to separate.
His first marriage just didn't work out. They didn't get a divorce.
After the divorce, Omar needed a fresh start, so he moved in with his mother to get back on his feet. That's when he met 20-year-old Alicia Noel.
Hey,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing well. You must be Omar.
Yes.
Alicia and Omar, they met on the same block. They were kind of like, they were adults, but it was like girl next door kind of situation. And they struck up some kind of conversation.
I used to come outside sometimes and see them talking, but I didn't think anything of it at first.
They used to see each other back and forth. From that sort of warm experience, they started to have a relationship.
It didn't take long for Omar to fall for Alicia.
It evolved very quickly just because of seeing each other every day.
Alicia represented a fresh start for Omar after his divorce.
I've never seen him actually so happy. Seeing him connect with someone.
Alicia was just as smitten with Omar, and despite their difference in age, the couple had no trouble forging their bond.
They had a great time together. They used to go out, they used to travel together.
To Omar's family, Alicia was a perfect fit for him.
She would be in the house, she would be talking to my mom. We trusted her, and she started to become family.
In 2009, the romance between Omar and Alicia was burning bright and showed no signs of fizzling out.
They got engaged within the first 6 months of even dating.
This was the woman of his dreams, the best thing that's ever happened to him.
Omar and Alicia married in August of 2010.
The wedding was really good. A lot of family came. We all had a great time. They seemed really, really happy.
He was absolutely in love with his wife, and she was in love with him.
It wasn't long before Omar and Alicia had another reason to celebrate.
Shortly after they tied the knot, Alicia got pregnant and gave birth to Omar's daughter. He was very happy to be a new dad.
This guy's a family guy. He loved his kids.
With Omar making good money as an iron worker and Alicia as a registered nurse, to make sure they had room for their growing family, the couple bought a $500,000 townhouse in Brownsville.
It was a nice two-family house where they were able to rent out the downstairs.
The both of them were hardworking young people.
Alicia and Omar had created a perfect life together. But a violent attack will rob them of their fairy tale ending when on February 24th, 2013, Alicia Noel Murray notifies police that her husband has been shot.
She was very emotional.
They trying to talk to her to figure out what's going on.
EMTs rush to save Omar's life as detectives collect more information from Alicia.
She saw Omar lying with 3 gunshot wounds into his chest, a lot of blood.
While Omar fights for his life, police begin the investigation into what happened.
The clock is ticking for Omar.
Was Omar Murray in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or was he a target? With a new home and a new baby, 2013 appeared to start off perfectly for Omar and Alicia Murray.
It seemed like it was a good time for them in their marriage.
Now, on the afternoon of February 24th, the NYPD have just found Omar in the foyer of the couple's Brooklyn townhouse, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds.
He's still breathing. EMS takes him and they bring him to Brookdale Hospital for treatment.
While the doctors work to save Omar, detectives are questioning Alicia about what she witnessed.
When the detectives got on the scene, Alicia sounded like she was afraid.
Alicia tells detectives that Omar had just returned home when he was attacked.
He was going to pick up groceries to cook dinner. When he came back, she saw him coming into the house from the car.
Alicia states she walked away from the window to meet Omar at the door, and that's when she heard gunshots. Alicia says once she heard the shots, she looked down the stairs and saw Omar laid out on the floor, then hid with her daughter in the back bedroom. Police ask Alicia if she knows who might be responsible, but she claims Omar was well-liked and didn't have problems with anyone that she knew of.
He's just a really amazing person. One of a kind in a very positive way. No negativity came from that man.
After getting Alicia's statement, officers escort her to the hospital while detectives continue their investigation.
They come now process the crime scene. They're looking for these spent casings, a fingerprint, a shoe print, or anything that they can get to help them solve this crime.
Crime scene investigators don't locate any shell casings, and there are too many fingerprints to get a clean lift. But they do see something that might provide some answers.
They do see that there's cameras at this location, at the victim's house.
They seem to be brand new security cameras. They, of course, go to check the cameras, but they weren't working.
Detectives note the wire supplying power to the cameras was unplugged. Was this an oversight, or was it intentional? Detectives now turn to the surrounding neighborhood for possible witnesses.
They're gonna canvass the area, they're gonna knock on doors.
You look for possible witnesses that may have seen something that happened.
While neighbors claim to have heard the shots, none of them saw the shooter.
It can be a very rough neighborhood. There's gunshots every day, every night.
People hear it so often, it's almost like they get accustomed to it.
Detectives consider another possibility. With the neighborhood a hotspot for gang activity, perhaps residents were afraid of retaliation.
In the Brownsville section, you had the Bloods, you had the Crips, and they all had their territorial areas.
Had Omar been caught in the crossfire of rival gangs?
As detectives, you'd start with the most logical, which would be a push and robbery, a home invasion, because it's common in that particular area.
Based on the evidence so far, that doesn't appear to be the case.
There was nothing stolen from the house.
With a robbery ruled out, detectives move on to the next possibility, that Omar was targeted. While detectives wait for word on Omar's status, they dig into his background.
Has he been involved with other gang members? Or has he potentially done things to other people that would warrant someone else to come and do this to him?
Their database finds no evidence of criminal activity.
Omar didn't have any ties to any gangs. He didn't have a criminal record that would cause somebody to want to do him harm directly, like a vengeance kind of thing.
He wasn't the type of guy to have problems with anyone on the streets. He's very cautious, very street aware, street smarts. Where he grew up was rough. My brother's not the type of guy to even get caught up into something like that.
He's a hard-working man, makes good money, a good family man, well-liked in the community. So what's the motive here?
At this point, the police are like, well, who could have possibly have done this to this guy?
The case becomes more urgent when detectives receive word from the hospital that Omar Murray has died. When police deliver the sad news to Omar's family, they're devastated.
I fell down and started crying. I was on my knees. We were really close. And so I was out of it. Really heartbroken, man.
As the family grieves, detectives, now investigating a homicide, catch what they hope is a break in the case.
Police just happened to find a camera in front of a business.
Unlike the cameras in the Murray home, this one was fully functional, and detectives have their first look at the killer. Less than 2 square miles in area, and home to almost 60,000 people, Brooklyn's Brownsville neighborhood has the most violent crime rate per capita in all of New York City. Its murder rate is almost 10 times the city's overall average. In 2013 alone, there were 72 shootings in the neighborhood, with 15 resulting in fatalities. Brooklyn detectives investigating the murder of 37-year-old Omar Murray have just made a crucial discovery.
The police are scouring the neighborhood, trying to find some type of footage, and they just happen to find a camera in front of a business nearby.
They find one that's able to capture the street and our victim's home.
Detectives bring the footage down to the precinct for review, and what they find shines a new light on the case.
On the day in question, you have Omar going out. You see Omar leave.
The timestamp on the footage is consistent with what Omar's wife Alicia told detectives. that Omar left at approximately 12:15. A few minutes later, after Omar leaves, detectives see a dark-colored sedan pull up to the Murray residence.
It just stops, and then you see a person get out the car and walk in the same direction of where the house is.
On the video, the man walks up to the entryway of the building. Detectives note that the man is easily able to enter the building as if he has a key. At 12:43 p.m., the same car pulls up outside the apartment building a second time.
The car comes back before Omar gets home.
This time, a different man gets out of the car and walks right into the entryway.
They're looking at that video from across the street. They find a taller male that goes into the residence.
Then, 13 minutes later, Omar comes home. Moments after Omar enters the building, the taller man is seen leaving.
When the person is leaving the house, they're running back to the car.
To detectives, the video evidence leaves little doubt that this is Omar Murray's killer. Luckily, detectives are able to identify the man in the video as Kirk Porteous, a man well known to police.
Kirk Porteous was this known gang member.
People know who he is. He's a Crip. He's a bad guy. He's an enforcer in the street.
Detectives begin to suspect Omar may have had some skeletons in his closet. Was this hard-working family man harboring a deadly secret?
You gotta start thinking, is it someone that he owed money to? What's going on?
Detectives also need to find out the identity of the man who went in the house before Kirk Porteous. Whoever he is, he obviously had been to the Murray residence before.
He's starting to think, is it someone that knew Omar?
After identifying Porteous, detectives send out an APB for the known gang member. Then ask Omar's widow Alicia to come in for an interview to see if she can shed light on this mystery man.
Thank you for coming in today.
Did you find out who killed Omar?
We think so, but we have a few questions.
The detectives begin by asking Alicia about the home security system.
The cameras in the foyer were not hooked up. Any idea why?
I had no idea they weren't working. Omar usually handles those things. He installed them recently.
So they were new?
Yes, he bought them after what happened.
They ask, why are these cameras disconnected? So they lean on her, and the bomb drops. Someone had taken shots at Omar once before.
Alicia tells detectives the incident occurred on February 6th, less than 3 weeks before the murder.
Omar was outside, somewhat adjacent to the front of the house.
Some unknown person came out, fired rounds.
Omar escaped the hail of bullets and got in the house and screamed for Alicia, saying, "Somebody's shooting at me."
Alicia tells detectives after the shooting, Omar became increasingly paranoid.
He would circle the block like 3 times just to make sure no one's following him or anything.
According to Alicia, in addition to the cameras, Omar had also purchased a revolver. She also claims she doesn't know where Omar kept the gun. Switching gears, detectives hope Alicia will recognize the man who seemed to unlock the door for Kirk Porteous.
They show her this footage of these 2 men going in the house.
When Alicia sees the footage, she's shocked to recognize one of the 2 men.
When they question Alicia about this, she says, I have no idea who the taller gentleman is, but I know the other guy.
Yes, I know him.
She's like, "Oh, I don't recognize this guy, but this guy over here, that's Damien Lavelle. We've been having an affair."
NYPD detectives investigating Omar Murray's murder have just ID'd the second of 2 men they believe to be responsible for the 37-year-old's death, a man named Damien Lavelle. And what's more, Omar's wife, Alicia Noel Murray, is the one to identify him.
We believe he has a key to your home. How would he have that?
He was remodeling a lower unit for us, so we gave him a key. I should also tell you, he and I were involved.
She admits that she was having an affair with Damien. And now the police are like, whoa, what's going on here?
Did Omar know?
No, he was too busy to notice.
When pressed by detectives, Alicia reveals her affair with Damien was in response to Omar's own infidelity.
She found out that he was cheating just before they got married.
But Alicia forgave him for it, and they still moved on and got married.
Though she tried to repair the relationship, Alicia says their marriage was far from perfect.
Those issues from before the marriage just continued into the marriage.
She finds out that he's cheating again.
Look, I was hurt and angry, but then I met Damien.
Alicia tells detectives the news had come at a difficult time for her.
She had just given birth, and it was a difficult pregnancy for her.
Alicia claims she first met Damien shortly before he started renovating the lower level of the Murray home.
They used to see each other often, or to be clear, he used to see her. At some point, he started speaking to her. Emotionally, she was needy. She wasn't feeling beautiful.
Alicia confesses, eventually the innocent flirtation became physical.
They became a little bit more intimate, and that's when the affair started.
According to Alicia, the renovation work provided the perfect cover.
He's downstairs fixing up the drywall. She's upstairs, and as soon as Omar leaves for the day, they will get it on in the house.
After feeling both betrayed and neglected by Omar, Alicia relished the attention from Damien. Alicia also admits that as she became more angry with Omar, she began taking more chances with Damien.
She actually admitted that they'd have sex while Omar was upstairs in the house.
It was almost as if she wanted to get caught or she wanted to hurt him as much as she was hurt.
It wasn't something that she was proud of.
However, according to Alicia, she knew the affair wouldn't fix things with Omar.
She seems to be a little bit ashamed for even doing this.
She said that she wasn't leaving her husband. She said at that point she didn't want to be with Damien anymore.
Did you break it off with him?
Yes.
Well, how did he take it?
He didn't want to hear it.
He really wanted to be with her. They were gonna be together.
As an investigator, you have to think that Damien must have done it because he wants to get rid of the husband.
Realizing her affair with Damien may have led to Omar's death, Alicia breaks down.
Oh my God. What have I done?
She believes it's her fault because she brought the guy into the house. So she's guilt-ridden.
Detectives press Alicia to give them any information she can on how to find Damien.
Alicia complies and she turns over all his contact information.
It's only a few hours before detectives are able to track Damien down and bring him in for questioning.
They're asking him all these questions about Alicia, Omar's murder, and he's looking like, I didn't do anything.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, maybe you could explain this.
They show him the video, and clearly he could see the jig's up. They got me. So he says, okay, I was having an affair with the wife.
We know that Porteous pulled the trigger, and that you let him in.
What's he gonna do? And he tells him the whole story.
Damien admits that he'd hired Kirk Porteous to kill Omar Murray.
Kirk Porteous was this known gang member. He was known as that guy that would just do anything as long as you were paying.
How much did you pay him?
Deal was for $3,500. $500 up front.
Damien tells detectives he'd already paid Kirk $500. The remaining $3,000 had not been paid.
My brother's life got taken for like $500.
Kirk was going to murder a man, take away his life for $500. That's all he was getting.
Detectives now need one last piece of the puzzle before they can bring formal charges against Damien Lavelle and Kirk Porteous. Was Alicia Noel Murray involved? That's when Damien delivers a bombshell accusation against his lover.
Why did you do it?
For Alicia.
Because you were in love with her.
Yes. And because she told me to.
It was her idea, is what he told the police.
He says that she wanted to kill her husband. He's so in love with her that he's agreeing to commit murder.
Damien Lavelle has just confessed to paying Kirk Porteous in a murder-for-hire plot to kill Omar Murray. But Damien claims he was acting on orders from his lover, Omar's wife, Alicia Noel Murray.
Damien tells police that one day when they had just finished having sex, Alicia was telling Damien about how she really needs to get rid of Omar. Alicia was going to give Damien $3,500 to pull off the job.
Damien claims he was willing to go through the murder because of his feelings for Alicia.
He was in love with this woman. He knew he wanted to be with her. And hearing this particular idea, he was going to go along with it. Anything she wanted, he wanted to do it for her.
He said that he thought that he and Alicia were going to ride off in the sunset together.
After his confession, detectives book Damien on murder charges and escort him to a holding cell. With Damien in custody, police redouble their efforts to find Kirk Porteous.
They start flooding the streets with officers.
But it's not until March 1st, 5 days after Omar's murder, that detectives are finally able to track Porteous down.
When police pick up Kirk, they're showing him all the evidence that they have against him.
They tell him, Damien's giving you up. We know it was you. They know he's the shooter.
He told us that he did it for Alicia.
Who?
Omar's wife.
News to me.
All Kirk can say is, I don't know any Alicia. I don't know who the guy is. It was just a simple job for him. It was nothing.
Kirk claims all he knows is who hired him and who the target was.
Damien's the one that said, hey, can you do this for me?
And you didn't ask why he did it?
Look, when the money's right, I don't ask any questions.
He says, I never met Alicia. I don't know this woman. Never had any conversations. I only had a conversation with Damien.
Detectives conclude their interview with Kirk Porteous and charge him with murder.
They had Damien and they had the shooter arrested 5 days after the murder.
Now detectives are left searching for proof that Alicia was part of the murder plot.
The police are getting accounts from Alicia, they're getting accounts from Damien, and the both of them, who are lovers, having an affair on a guy who is now dead, they're like, it wasn't me, it was that person. It wasn't me, it was that person. They needed to figure out what was going on here.
Detectives decide to apply a little pressure and reveal to Alicia that Damien claims the plan was all hers.
Thank you for coming back. We have some good news. We made an arrest on Damien. But we still have a few questions.
It's about something Damien told us.
Well, what did he say?
That you asked to put the hit on Omar.
What? No, that is a lie. Why would I put a hit on my husband, the father of my child?
She said, listen, I didn't do this. I had nothing to do with this.
She had no idea what Damien's plan was.
Alicia insists it was never her intention to have Omar killed.
She said, at the end of the day, they were trying to get their marriage back together again.
She should not have brought Damien into the house. But it never had anything to do with killing her husband.
The affair with Damien. It was her way of getting back at Omar.
I was angry with Omar, but I didn't want him killed.
someone's lying. But is it Alicia or is it Damien?
Damien, in his mind, I think he begins to put something together about how he could have Omar's life.
If Alicia was really part of the murder plot, why would she identify Damien from the security footage? Why would she admit to the affair or the previous attempt on Omar's life?
It just doesn't make sense.
When you think about it, everything would point to Damien, that Damien orchestrated this whole thing by himself.
However, detectives aren't quite ready to write off Alicia as a suspect.
That's all we have for now.
They release Alicia and reach out to Omar's family to gain insight into the couple's marriage.
So once the police have all these different storylines about Alicia, Kirk, and Damien, they then decide to start back from square one. They go to the family. They want to talk to Omar's mom, his relatives.
The family admits that the couple had their share of problems.
My brother seemed like he was just over it. Like he just wasn't even there anymore. So I kind of had a feeling something was going on.
Omar's family tells detectives they never believed Omar was in danger.
I felt something was wrong, but I didn't say like anything. I just asked him if he was all right. He's like, yeah, I'm good.
The family had never heard of Damien Lavelle or Kirk Porteous.
The family are like, who are these people? We have no idea who they are.
Talking to the family still leaves detectives with more questions than answers.
Why would she be involved and why would she want her husband dead?
Looking for answers, detectives pull the couple's financial records and make an astounding discovery. Omar and Alicia Murray were drowning in debt.
The car payments are late, the mortgage is late.
The mortgage was over $500,000. They have other kind of bills that are just piling up.
Her credit cards were blown up, maxed out.
But could their financial struggles have been a motive for murder? After a little more digging, detectives discover there's one bill that the couple kept up to date.
They had 3 separate life insurance policies that totaled almost $900,000.
The sole beneficiary of those policies is Alicia Noel Murray. The possibility of collecting almost $1 million upon Omar's death may have been too tempting for Alicia.
$900,000 would set her record straight. She would just be debt-free.
But is Alicia really cold-blooded enough to kill her husband for money? Or was Damien Lavelle pulling the strings? Detectives may have an answer when they contact the insurance companies.
February 24th is the murder. On February 26th, 2 days after, her husband's shot, and she's trying to get the money.
I didn't even know about her greed before this even happened. I knew nothing of that because she put on such a great act, like of this kind and genuine person. Then I started thinking like this was all for gain and money. I'm just like, geez, like just leave the guy. Why do you have to do that? This is who you really are.
Detectives investigating the murder of Omar Murray have arrested 2 men, gunman Kirk Porteous and the man who confessed to hiring him, Damien Lavelle. Detectives now believe they've also uncovered a possible motive for Alicia Noel Murray's involvement in the crime. Almost $1 million worth of life insurance on Omar.
The detectives call up and freeze those accounts until our investigation is done. And she wasn't able to get that money.
With the insurance payout on hold, investigators continue searching for evidence that can confirm Damien's story.
The police get the phone records from Alicia.
Combing through the phone records, detectives hit the jackpot.
They were able to obtain text messages, which were incriminating.
Police started decoding everything and looking at timestamps and realized that, hey, this was a joint venture between Damien and Alicia.
She was definitely involved. in orchestrating this crime.
According to the text messages, Alicia was eager for Damien to follow through on the murder.
Alicia consistently would reach out to Damien and said, "Are you gonna do it today? Are you gonna do it today?"
Finally, that day came on February 24th, 2013. According to the phone records, Alicia sent Damien a text at 12:17, moments after Omar had left the house.
She's telling him that Omar is going to the supermarket.
The moment that they saw her text Damien while Omar was out the house, that was it. They knew that this was the moment.
Detectives place Alicia Noel Murray under arrest for murder in December of 2015.
Alicia was indicted for the first-degree murder of her husband.
I was happy. I would just want revenge, man. It was just like an eye for an eye type of feeling.
On May 15th, 2017, Alicia and Kirk Porteous, the alleged triggerman, both go on trial for Omar's murder.
It was really interesting to see the two of them at the defense table together. They didn't know each other, and they really had no relationship with each other.
The man who connects them, Damien Lavelle, is the prosecution's star witness.
He said that she was the mastermind.
On the stand, Damien Lavelle admits that he arranged the first attempt on Omar's life on February 6th at Alicia's request. After that attempt failed, Damien says Alicia hatched a new plan to take Omar's life, and this time it worked. Damien goes on to tell the court exactly how the murder unfolded.
They drive to the house so Damien could pick up the murder weapon, which was Omar's gun.
She supplied the gun that Omar had originally bought to protect himself.
Are the cameras off?
Yeah. Make it quick.
Damien returns to the car, and the two drive around. When they return at 12:43, Damien hands the gun to Kirk Porteous.
Don't leave until I come back, understand?
A few minutes later, Omar comes home and walks right into the ambush.
As Omar was opening the door to the house, Kirk opened fire on Omar. He shot him 3 times in the chest.
Then, leaving Omar fatally wounded in the foyer, Kirk makes his escape. And once Damien and Kirk were both gone, Alicia dialed 911. It's a complete account of the murder from start to finish. But is it true? When it's the defense's turn, they tell the jury to consider the source.
You have somebody who is highly motivated to lie because his very life depends on it.
Then, after planting a seed of doubt in the jury's mind, the defense puts Alicia on the stand.
She was just cool as a cucumber. She was very, very strong.
Alicia is adamant that she had nothing to do with Omar's death.
She said, it was Damien. He wanted me to be with him and orchestrated this whole thing by himself.
Alicia also offers an explanation for the text she sent Damien shortly before Omar's murder. She claims her affair with Damien was still on, and she invited him over for sex.
She said I asked him to come over for a quickie while Omar was out at the store.
She can't be more sorry about the cheating, especially what it led to, which is the death of her husband.
She did seem like she regretted ever meeting Damien.
She said it over and over. It's wrong. But that is not evidence of murder. She's communicated with him just to say, look, he's not home, come now. That's it.
Will the jury agree? It only takes them 2 hours to reach a verdict.
Alicia was convicted of first-degree murder.
At Alicia's sentencing hearing, Omar's family argues for the maximum punishment.
They laid it out there. What a cruel and terrible person she was. And she killed their son, their brother, for $900,000.
Their words carry weight. The judge hands down the harshest sentence New York law allows.
He gives a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
She just looked like a robot. She didn't look like she felt bad or she didn't look scared.
The jury also finds Kirk Porteous guilty of second-degree murder, and the judge sentences him to life in prison. As for Damien Lavelle, the man who helped set up the hit, he receives a 15-year prison sentence.
I don't care if he didn't, physically do anything. He was involved, he plotted that. He helped hire the shooter. So he should have got more time.
While Damien played a role in the murder, the court rules that Alicia was ultimately to blame.
She just was using him.
He was just another pawn in her scheme.
As for Omar and Alicia's daughter, she is being raised by Omar's family, who pledged to keep his memory alive.
The asphalt of Brownsville, Brooklyn, has a way of holding on to the heat of the day, just as it holds on to its secrets. It is a neighborhood where the rhythm of life is often punctuated by the staccato percussion of gunfire, a place where survival is a daily occupation, and silence is a currency more valuable than gold. But for Omar Murray, Brownsville was not a trap. It was a stage for his triumph. He was the classic archetype of the American success story, the kind of man who makes census takers weep with joy. An immigrant from Jamaica, he arrived in 1995 with little more than a work ethic that could bend steel, which was fitting considering he became an iron worker. For nearly 2 decades, he welded, lifted, and sweated, building the skyline of a city that often forgot men like him existed. He was the guy who smiled with his whole face, the life of the party, who didn't need a drink to be intoxicated by the simple joy of providing for his family. He was, by all accounts, a good guy, a designation that in the noir landscape of criminal psychology is usually the first stepping stone to becoming a victim. By 2013, Omar seemed to have cracked the code. He had navigated the choppy waters of a failed first marriage with dignity, maintaining his role as a devoted son to his mother and a father figure to his siblings. He had pulled himself up, dusted himself off, and found love again, or so he thought. Enter Alicia Noel. She was 20 years old when they met, a nurse with a smile that mirrored his own and a youthfulness that promised a fresh start. To Omar, a man approaching his 40s, Alicia was a second wind. She was the girl next door, quite literally, and their romance blossomed on the stoops of Brooklyn, fueled by the intoxicating proximity of shared geography and shared dreams. They moved fast, the way people do when they are chasing a fairy tale without reading the fine print. Engaged within 6 months, married in August 2010, parents shortly after, they bought a townhouse, a $500,000 slice of the American pie with a rental unit downstairs to help with the mortgage. It was perfect. It was a brochure for happiness. It was a lie. If Omar was the protagonist of a heartwarming drama about perseverance, Alicia was secretly auditioning for a role in a Shakespearean tragedy, playing the part of the discontented spouse with a taste for champagne on a beer budget. The beautiful townhouse, the symbol of their success, was actually a tomb of debt. The mortgage was late, the car payments were lagging, the credit cards were hyperventilating, maxed out to the limit. They were drowning in red ink, but to the outside world, they were the Murrays. Successful, happy, upwardly mobile. But financial stress is a corrosive acid. It eats away at the foundation of a marriage until the structure collapses. And while Omar was breaking his back on construction sites to keep the lights on, Alicia was finding comfort elsewhere. Specifically, she was finding comfort in the arms of the man hired to fix the drywall in their rental unit. Damien Lavelle was a contractor, a term used loosely here to describe a man who was handy with a hammer and even handier at making bad decisions. He was remodeling the downstairs unit, but his most significant project became the dismantling of the Murray marriage. It is a cliche as old as time, the lonely housewife and the workman, but in the hands of Alicia and Damien, it morphed from a romance novel trope into a dark comedy of errors. They carried on their affair right under Omar's nose, sometimes literally while he was upstairs. A level of audacity that speaks to a profound lack of conscience or a terrifying abundance of narcissism. Alicia, feeling neglected and perhaps realizing that a $500,000 house requires actual work to maintain, poured her grievances into Damien's ear. She played the damsel in distress. He played the knight in shining armor, armed with a paint roller and a misplaced sense of chivalry. But affairs, like shoddy construction work, eventually show cracks. Alicia didn't just want a lover, she wanted an exit strategy. Divorce is messy. Divorce involves lawyers, division of assets, and the admission of failure. Widowhood, on the other hand, comes with sympathy casseroles and, more importantly, life insurance payouts. Omar Murray, responsible man that he was, had insured his life for nearly $900,000. To a couple drowning in debt, Omar was worth significantly more dead than alive. He had become a depreciating asset in his own home. The cold calculus of greed began to override the warm fuzzies of their early romance. Alicia and Damien didn't just want to be together, they wanted to be together and rich. The unraveling began with a rehearsal. On the 6th of February 2013, shots rang out near the Murray home. Omar, displaying the street smarts he had honed over a lifetime, dodged the bullets, sprinting into his house, terrified but alive. He screamed for his wife, telling her someone was shooting at him. The irony here is thick enough to cut with a knife. He was running for safety into the arms of the woman who had likely painted the target on his back. This botched attempt had a peculiar side effect. It made Omar paranoid. He wasn't stupid. He knew someone was out to get him. He started circling the block before parking. He bought a revolver for protection. And, most critically, he installed a state-of-the-art security camera system. He was fortifying his castle, unaware that the enemy was already sleeping in the master bedroom. Fast forward to Sunday, the 24th of February 2013, a chilly afternoon in Brownsville. The neighborhood was ticking, along with its usual low-level tension. Omar had gone out to the grocery store, a mundane domestic errand. He was picking up ingredients for dinner, fulfilling his role as the provider until the very last second. Inside the house, the stage was being set. The brand new security cameras, the ones Omar had installed to prevent exactly what was about to happen, were unplugged. A simple tug of a wire, a massive oversight in the criminal mastermind handbook. If you are going to stage a home invasion in a house with cameras, you don't unplug them. You let them record the intruder. Unplugging them screams inside job. But criminals, contrary to popular belief, are rarely geniuses. They are usually just desperate people making a series of catastrophic choices. At 12:17 p.m., Alicia texted Damien. The message was banal in appearance, but lethal in intent. She was letting him know the bird had flown the coop. Omar was out. The timeline was live. Minutes later, a dark sedan rolled up. Kirk Porteous stepped out. If Damien was the architect of this disaster, Kirk was the subcontractor. A known figure in the streets, a member of the Crips, and a man whose price for a human life was roughly the cost of a used Honda Civic. He had been promised $3,500. He had received $500 up front. $500. In the economy of death, Omar Murray's life was being traded for a down payment that wouldn't even cover a month's rent in the house he worked so hard to buy. The security footage from a nearby business, the one camera the plotters forgot to account for, captured the tragic ballet. At 12:43 p.m., the car returned. A tall man, later identified as Damien, walked into the house. He didn't break in. He walked in. He had a key. He had a key because he was the contractor, in every sense of the word. He was there to hand off the weapon, Omar's own gun, the one bought for protection, now repurposed for his execution. Damien left. Kirk waited. When Omar returned, bags of groceries likely in hand, he walked into his own foyer and into an ambush. 3 shots, chest, close range. The ironworker, the father, the dreamer, crumbled to the floor of the home that was supposed to be his sanctuary. Then came the performance. Alicia called 911. The recording is a masterclass in distress, or at least an attempt at it. She claimed she was hiding in the bedroom with the baby, terrified, unsure if the shooter was coming up the stairs. She played the part of the frightened mother perfectly. Police arrived to find Omar bleeding out, his life ebbing away on the floorboards. He was rushed to Brookdale Hospital, but the damage was catastrophic. The medical team fought, but the narrative had already been written. Omar Murray was pronounced dead. The detectives from the NYPD's 73rd Precinct are not people who are easily impressed by theatrical performances. They arrived at the scene and immediately sensed that the vibration was off. The home invasion theory had holes in it, large enough to drive a dark sedan through. Nothing was stolen. The house wasn't tossed. Robbers generally want to rob. They don't just stop by to commit a murder and leave the flat screen TV. It looked like a hit. And when it looks like a hit, you look at the people standing in the rubble. Alicia was escorted to the hospital, playing the grieving widow. But back at the house, the crime scene investigators were finding the first loose thread of the sweater, the cameras. Brand new, high definition, and unplugged. Not broken, not shot out, unplugged. It was an omission that screamed intent. Why would a man terrified for his life, who just installed a system, leave it disconnected? He wouldn't. But someone who knew he was coming home and didn't want the welcome wagon recorded, they certainly would. The investigation pivoted to the neighborhood. Detectives canvassed, knocking on doors, navigating the no-snitch culture of Brownsville. They found nothing at first, just echoes of gunshots that people were too used to hearing. But technology is the silent witness that never forgets. They found the surveillance camera across the street, the one belonging to a business that actually cared about security. The grainy footage was a revelation. It showed the timeline that contradicted the chaos. It showed the dark sedan. It showed the tall man walking in with the ease of a resident. It showed the shooter entering and fleeing. It showed a conspiracy in motion. The tall man's gait was distinctive, his familiarity with the door lock damning. And then there was the car. Police work is often about connecting the dots between a blurry bumper and a face in a mugshot. They identified Kirk Porteous first. He was known to the system, a euphemism for a frequent flyer in the criminal justice world. An enforcer, a bad guy. But why would a Crip enforcer want a hard-working ironworker dead? There was no beef on the street. Omar wasn't in the game. He was a civilian. This meant Kirk was a tool, not the architect. Then came the interview that flipped the script. Detectives brought Alicia in, not as a suspect initially, but as a resource. They showed her the video. They showed her the two men. They expected a blank stare or a tearful shake of the head. Instead, Alicia, perhaps thinking she could control the narrative by giving them a crumb, pointed at the screen. She didn't know the shooter, she said. But the tall man, the one who unlocked the door? That's Damien Lavelle, she admitted. He's doing some work on the house. And then the kicker, we were having an affair. It was a bold strategy. By admitting to the infidelity, she perhaps hoped to distance herself from the murder. I'm a cheater, not a killer, was the subtext. She threw Damien under the bus, backed over him, and then parked on top of him. She told police about the affair, the sex while Omar was home, the emotional neediness. She painted Damien as the obsessed lover, the one who couldn't handle the rejection when she tried to break it off. It was a classic fatal attraction defense, but in reverse. She claimed Damien must have killed Omar to have her all to himself. The police, however, know that love triangles usually end in slashed tires or drunken arguments, not contract killings with a $500 down payment unless there is something else at play. They brought Damien in. Damien Lavelle was not a hardened criminal mastermind. He was a contractor who got caught up in a woman's web. When the detectives sat him down and played the video, his confidence evaporated like steam. He saw himself. He saw the gig was up. And when they told him that Alicia, the woman he did this for, the woman he thought he was riding off into the sunset with, had identified him, the silence in the interrogation room was heavy with the sound of a heartbreaking and a survival instinct kicking in. Damien flipped. He spilled everything. He didn't just confess, he narrated the entire plot. He admitted to hiring Kirk. He admitted to the money, the paltry $3,500. But he insisted, with the desperation of a drowning man, that it was all Alicia's idea. She was the one who wanted Omar gone. She was the one who supplied the gun. She was the one texting him the all clear. He was just the love-struck fool who followed orders. She told me to. he said, a sentence that stripped away the veneer of the romantic tragedy and revealed the cold, transactional nature of the crime. Police then snatched up Kirk Porteous. 5 days after the murder, they had the shooter. Kirk was a stone wall initially. I don't know any Alicia, he said, and he was telling the truth. He was the gig economy worker of murder. He dealt with the middleman. He didn't know the client. He just knew the target and the price. When the money's right, I don't ask questions, he told them. A chilling epitaph for his own morality. But he confirmed Damien hired him. Now, the detectives had a problem. They had 2 men pointing fingers, but they needed to nail the grieving widow. It's hard to convict a woman on the word of her lover, accomplice. Juries are skeptical of snitches trying to save their own skin. They needed hard evidence. They went back to the finances. The debt was the motive. The $900,000 life insurance policy was the goal. Alicia had already tried to claim it, days after the murder. The ink on the death certificate was barely dry, and she was already reaching for the payout. It was greed, naked and unashamed. But the smoking gun was digital. Text messages, the modern criminal's Achilles heel. They recovered the text between Alicia and Damien. They weren't love notes. They were logistical updates. Are you gonna do it today? He's going to the supermarket. These weren't the texts of a woman trying to break off an affair. They were the texts of a general commanding troops. The timing of the text sent just after Omar left the house, 12:17 p.m., matched perfectly with the arrival of the hit team. It was coordination. It was conspiracy. In December 2015, Alicia Noel Murray was indicted. The trial, which began in May 2017, was a spectacle of betrayal. Damien took the stand as the prosecution's star witness. He looked at the woman he killed for, the woman who was now sitting at the defense table claiming she was the victim. He detailed the plot, the failed first attempt, the gun handoff, the instructions. Alicia took the stand in her own defense, a high-risk maneuver that rarely pays off. She was cool, composed, cool as a cucumber, observers noted. She denied everything. She claimed the text messages were innocent. She was just inviting Damien over for a quickie while Omar was out. It was a laughable explanation. Who invites a lover over for sex minutes after their husband leaves to buy groceries, knowing he'll be back in 20 minutes? It defied logic. It defied physics. It was the desperate fabrication of a sociopath who thought she could charm a jury the way she charmed Damien. She admitted she was a bad wife. She admitted she was a cheater. But a killer? No, she insisted. That was all Damien. He was obsessed. He acted alone. The jury didn't buy the ticket she was selling. It took them only 2 hours to deliberate. In the world of complex murder trials, 2 hours is a lightning strike. It means there was no doubt. It means the story she spun didn't just have holes, it was entirely made of air. Alicia Noel Murray was convicted of first-degree murder. At sentencing, the mask finally slipped, or rather, it hardened. She showed no emotion, no tears for the husband she orchestrated the death of, no remorse for the daughter she effectively orphaned. She stood there like a robot. The judge, likely disgusted by the sheer calculation of the crime, the betrayal of the marital vow for an insurance check, threw the book at her. Life without parole. She would die in prison. Kirk Porteous, the trigger man who killed a stranger for $500, got life in prison. He was a blunt instrument of violence, and society locked him away in the toolbox. Damien Lavelle, the lovelorn fool who facilitated a murder for a woman who would later testify against him, got 15 years. Some might say he got off light. Others might say living with the knowledge that he was played so thoroughly is a prison of its own. He was a pawn who thought he was a king. The tragedy of Omar Murray is not just that he died. It is that he died for nothing. He wasn't killed for a great passion or a vendetta. He was killed because his wife wanted to clear her credit card debt and didn't want the hassle of a divorce. He was killed because he was worth more as a corpse than as a husband. In the aftermath, Omar's family was left to pick up the pieces. His mother, the woman he took care of, had to bury her son. His daughter, an innocent byproduct of a toxic union, would grow up raised by Omar's relatives, learning about her father through photographs and stories of his smile, his hard work, and his love. They pledged to keep his memory alive, to ensure that he was remembered not as the victim of a sordid tabloid murder, but as the man who built skyscrapers and dreamed of a better life. Brownsville continued to turn. The seasons changed. The house on the block, the the one with the unplugged cameras and the tragic history, stood as a silent monument to the fragility of the American dream when it is built on a foundation of lies. The case of Omar Murray serves as a grim reminder to the detectives of the 73rd Precinct and to anyone paying attention. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the gang member on the corner or the robber in the night. Sometimes it's the person sleeping next to you, checking their watch, waiting for you to leave for groceries so they can text the contractor to come finish the job. Jim and I said, the streets of Brownsville, Brooklyn, have a rhythm all their own. A syncopated beat of sirens, laughter, slamming car doors, and the low hum of a community that is always awake, always watching, and always surviving. In this concrete tapestry, Omar Murray was a vibrant thread, a man who seemed to have cracked the code of the immigrant dream. He wasn't just a resident, he was a presence. Born in Jamaica, he had arrived in the United States in 1995. A 19-year-old with a work ethic that could bend steel, which was appropriate, considering he became an iron worker. For nearly 2 decades, he had woken up before the sun, put on his boots, and built the city that often ignored men like him. He was the guy who took care of his mother, the oldest sibling who bore the weight of family responsibility not as a burden, but as a badge of honor. But Omar wasn't all work and no play. The man knew how to light up a room. He was the life of the party, possessed of a smile that was less of a facial expression and more of a public utility, warming everyone in its radius. However, even the sunniest dispositions have their cloudy days. In 2007, his first marriage hit the rocks they separated, though they never quite got around to the paperwork of a divorce. Omar, ever the pragmatist, moved back in with his mother to reset his life, proving that sometimes to move forward, you have to go back to where you started. It was there, on the block he knew so well, that he met Alicia Noel. She was 20 years old, a registered nurse with a demeanor that suggested compassion and a future that looked bright. To Omar, she was the quintessential girl next door, a fresh start wrapped in a charming smile. Their courtship was a whirlwind, the kind of romance that makes bystanders dizzy. They were engaged within 6 months, a timeline that screams true love to romantics and slow down to divorce lawyers. They married in August 2010, surrounded by family who thought Alicia was the perfect fit, a woman who had seamlessly blended into the Murray clan. Life moved fast for the Murrays. Soon came the baby, a daughter who became the center of Omar's universe. And then came the house, a $500,000 townhouse in Brownsville, a symbol of their ascent into the middle class. It was a 2-family home, a sensible investment where they could rent out the downstairs unit to offset the mortgage. To the outside world, they were the picture of success. The hardworking iron worker, the caring nurse, the beautiful baby, the brownstone. But facades are expensive to maintain, and the mortar holding the Murray household together was beginning to crumble under the weight of debt. The mortgage was late, the car payments were lagging, the credit cards were maxed out, gasping for air. They were drowning in red ink, but they kept smiling because that's what you do when you're living a lie. Enter Damien Lavelle. If this were a casting call for a home wrecker, Damien would have been an unusual choice. He was a handyman, hired to renovate the downstairs unit of the Murray's townhouse. But Damien offered more than just drywall installation. He offered a listening ear to a wife who felt neglected. Alicia, feeling needy and perhaps disillusioned that her fairy tale came with bills, struck up a conversation with the man in the basement. It started with innocent flirtation, or as innocent as it can be when you're married, and quickly devolved into a full-blown affair. The renovation became the perfect cover. While Omar was out breaking his back to pay for the house, Alicia was downstairs breaking her vows. She even admitted later that they would be intimate inside the house while Omar was upstairs. A level of audacity that borders on the pathological, but affairs in cramped townhouses rarely end well. Alicia, perhaps realizing that a broke handyman wasn't a financial upgrade from a broke ironworker, tried to cool things off. But Damien was hooked. He was in love, or at least in lust. And he wasn't ready to pack up his tools and leave. And Alicia, well, Alicia had a problem. She had a husband she didn't want, a lover she couldn't control, and a mountain of debt she couldn't pay. But she did have one thing, a life insurance policy on Omar. 3 policies, actually, totaling nearly $900,000. Suddenly, the math began to change. Omar was a beloved father and husband, sure, but as a deceased policyholder, he was a winning lottery ticket. The plot they hatched was as clumsy as it was cruel. It began with a rehearsal on the 6th of February 2013. Omar was outside the house when a stranger opened fire. But Omar, street smart and quick on his feet, dodged the hail of bullets, scrambling into his house and screaming for his wife, "Somebody's shooting at me!" He survived, but he was shaken. He became paranoid, circling the block 3 times before parking, constantly looking over his shoulder. He bought a revolver for protection. And, most ironically, he installed a brand new security camera system to watch over his home. He was fortifying his castle against an enemy he thought was on the street, never suspecting the enemy was sleeping in his bed. The 24th of February 2013, a Sunday afternoon in Brownsville. The air was crisp and the neighborhood was buzzing with its usual Sunday energy. Inside the Murray residence, the stage was set for the final act. Omar, ever the provider, left the house around 12:15 p.m. to pick up groceries for dinner. He was going to cook for his family. As he walked out the door, he likely didn't notice that the brand new security cameras he had meticulously installed were unplugged. It was a glaring oversight or a deliberate sabotage. The wire had been pulled, the electronic eyes were blind. At 12:17 p.m., just moments after Omar's car pulled away, Alicia picked up her phone. She didn't call the police to report the cameras were out. She texted Damien. The message was simple, a digital signal flare. Omar was gone. A few minutes later, a dark sedan rolled onto the block. Inside was Kirk Porteous. Kirk was not a mastermind, he was a blunt instrument. A known gang member with a reputation as an enforcer, he was the kind of guy who would do anything if the price was right. And the price? A paltry $3,500. He had been paid $500 up front. Omar Murray's life, a life built on years of sweat and sacrifice, was being traded for less than the cost of a used hatchback. At 12:43 p.m., the car returned. This time, a tall man got out. It was Damien Lavelle. He walked up to the front door of the Murray home and entered with the casual confidence of a man who owns the place because he had a key. He wasn't breaking in, he was clocking in. Inside, he retrieved the murder weapon, Omar's own gun, the very revolver he had bought to protect himself after the first attack. Damien handed the gun to Kirk. The trap was baited. When Omar returned from the store, arms likely full of groceries, he walked into his foyer and into an ambush. Kirk Porteous was waiting. There were no words, just the deafening roar of gunfire in the small entryway. Omar was shot 3 times in the chest. He collapsed, bleeding out on the floor of the home he had worked so hard to buy. Upstairs, Alicia Noel Murray began her performance. She called 911, her voice trembling with what sounded like terror. She told the dispatcher she heard shots, that she was hiding in the bedroom with the baby, afraid the gunman was coming up the stairs. It was a compelling act. When police arrived, they found Omar clinging to life, but the wounds were too severe. He was rushed to Brookdale Hospital, but the ironworker's heart finally stopped beating. Omar Murray was dead. The detectives of the NYPD are a cynical bunch. They don't believe in coincidences, and they certainly don't believe in unrobbed robbery victims. Nothing was stolen from the house. This wasn't a home invasion gone wrong. It was an execution. And when they saw the unplugged cameras, the suspicion turned inward. Why would a man terrified for his life leave his security system disconnected? He wouldn't, but his wife might. The break in the case didn't come from the Murray's high-tech system, but from a neighbor's surveillance camera, one that was actually plugged in. The footage was grainy, but it told a damning story. It showed the dark sedan, it showed the tall man entering with a key, it showed the shooter fleeing. Detectives brought Alicia in. They showed her the video, hoping to catch her in a lie, and in a moment of bizarre calculation, she identified the tall man. "That's Damien Lavelle," she said. She admitted to the affair, perhaps thinking that confessing to adultery would inoculate her against a charge of murder. She spun a tale of a jealous lover who acted alone, a man obsessed with her who wanted her husband out of the way. But Damien Lavelle was not built for the interrogation room. When police picked him up and played the tape, he folded like a cheap card table. He confessed to hiring Kirk. He confessed to the plot, but he was adamant about one thing. It was her idea. He told detectives that Alicia wanted Omar dead, that she was the one who orchestrated it, the one who supplied the gun, the one who promised the money. He was just the love-struck fool who went along with it because he thought they were going to ride off into the sunset together. The police then tracked down Kirk Porteous. He was the final piece of the puzzle. He didn't know Alicia, he had never met her. To him, it was just a job. When the money's right, I don't ask any questions, he told detectives. A chilling mantra for a mercenary. But the glue that held the case against Alicia together wasn't just Damien's word. It was her own greed. Detectives discovered the financial ruin of the Murray household and the $900,000 life insurance policy. 2 days after her husband was murdered, Alicia had tried to claim the money. And then there were the text messages, the digital footprint of the conspiracy, the texts asking, "Are you gonna do it today?" The text sent at 12:17 p.m., alerting the killers that the target was moving. The trial was a spectacle of finger-pointing. Damien testified against Alicia, painting her as the Lady Macbeth of Brownsville. Alicia took the stand in her own defense, cool and robotic, insisting she was innocent of murder, guilty only of a quickie invitation that went wrong. She claimed the text message was just her asking Damien for sex, a defense that required the jury to believe she had the libido of a teenager and the timing of a disastrous coincidence. The jury didn't buy it. It took them only 2 hours to convict her. Alicia Noel Murray was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Kirk Porteous, the $500 hitman, also received life. Damien Lavelle, the handyman who dismantled a life, received 15 years. Omar Murray's story is a tragedy of modern greed. A reminder that the most dangerous threats often don't come from the mean streets, but from the person sleeping beside you, counting the days until the insurance policy pays out. His daughter is now raised by his family, who keep his memory alive not as the victim of a sensational crime, but as the smiling iron worker who built a life with his own hands, only to have it stolen by the one person he trusted most. The asphalt of Brownsville, Brooklyn, possesses a unique geological property. It seems to absorb the summer heat and hold it hostage well into the winter, radiating a distinct energy that is part survival instinct, part defiant optimism, and part low-level anxiety. It is a neighborhood where the soundtrack of life is a complex polyrhythm of sirens, church choirs, slamming car doors, and the occasional terrifying staccato of gunfire. To the uninitiated, Brownsville is a statistic, a red zone on a crime map, a cautionary tale told by real estate agents trying to sell condos in Park Slope. But to the people who live there, it is simply home, a place where the struggle is real, but so is the community. And in this concrete ecosystem, Omar Murray was not just surviving, he was thriving. He was the kind of man who makes census takers weep with joy, a statistical anomaly of success in a zip code that often swallowed dreams whole. Omar was the classic American success story, the remix. Born in Jamaica, he arrived on U.S. soil in 1995 at the tender age of 19, possessing little more than a suitcase full of hope and a work ethic that could bend titanium. And bending metal was exactly what he did. He became an iron worker, a profession that requires a specific kind of madness. You have to be willing to walk on steel beams, hundreds of feet in the air, trusting your life to a harness and the laws of physics, all while the wind tries to blow you into the Hudson River. For nearly 2 decades, Omar woke up before the pigeons, put on his boots, and built the skyline of a city that rarely looked down to acknowledge the men who built it up. He was a guy who smiled with his entire face, a smile that didn't just suggest happiness, but insisted on it. He was the life of the party, the man who could walk into a funeral and have everyone laughing about the good times within 10 minutes. He was a good son to his mother, a protective brother to his siblings, and a man who believed that if you worked hard enough, the universe would eventually cut you a break. By 2013, it seemed the universe had finally delivered. Omar had navigated the choppy waters of a failed first marriage with his dignity intact. It hadn't worked out. Romance is often the first casualty of reality, but they had separated without the scorched earth policy of a bitter divorce. He moved back in with his mother, a move that in some circles might be seen as a retreat, but in Omar's world, it was a tactical regrouping. It was there, on the very block where he grew up, that he spotted his second chance. Her name was Alicia Noel. Alicia was 20 years old when they met, a registered nurse with a demeanor that suggested compassion and a smile that mirrored Omar's own. To a man approaching his 40s, Alicia wasn't just a woman, she was a fountain of youth. She was the girl next door trope come to life, quite literally. Their courtship was conducted on the stoops and sidewalks of Brooklyn, fueled by the intoxicating proximity of shared geography and the heady rush of new love. They moved with the speed of people who are afraid the music is going to stop, engaged within 6 months, married in August 2010, a baby daughter shortly after. It was a whirlwind, a blur of wedding cake and baby formula. To cement their status as the new power couple of the block, they bought a house, and not just any house. They purchased a $500,000 townhouse in Brownsville. It was a fortress of domesticity, a two-family structure where they could live in the upper duplex and rent out the garden apartment to help with the mortgage. It was the smartest move in the playbook. They were landlords. They were property owners. They were living the dream, or so it looked from the sidewalk. If you peeled back the siding of that townhouse, however, you wouldn't find insulation. You would find a festering mold of debt. The American dream comes with a price tag, and the Murrays were shopping with money they didn't have. The mortgage was a monster that needed constant feeding. The car payments were late. The credit cards were maxed out, screaming for mercy. They were drowning in red ink, maintaining a facade of prosperity that was as thin as the drywall in their rental unit. But financial ruin is a boring, slow-moving disaster. It kills marriages, sure, but usually through arguments about grocery bills and silent treatments. What happened next turned a financial tragedy into a noir thriller. Enter Damien Lavelle. Damien was not a mastermind. He was not a suave criminal genius with a plan to rob the Louvre. He was a handyman, a contractor, a guy with a tool belt and a van that probably needed a new transmission. He was hired to renovate the downstairs unit of the Murray townhouse to make it ready for a tenant who could help pay that crushing mortgage. But Damien found himself fixing more than just the sheetrock. He began to fix Alicia's loneliness. The dynamic was a cliche as old as plumbing, the neglected housewife and the workman. While Omar was out risking his life on the high still to pay for the house, Alicia was downstairs in the dust and debris, pouring her heart out to the guy holding the hammer. She felt ignored. She felt the pressure of the debt. She felt needy, a dangerous emotion, when paired with a man who was right there, available, and wielding power tools. The innocent conversations about paint swatches turned into flirtations. The flirtations turned into lunch. And lunch turned into a full-blown affair conducted right under the nose of the unsuspecting husband. Alicia would later admit that they were intimate inside the house while Omar was upstairs. It takes a special kind of compartmentalization to betray your spouse in the kitchen while he is watching TV in the living room. It speaks to a level of risk-taking that borders on the pathological. But affairs, much like shoddy construction work, eventually show cracks. The thrill began to fade for Alicia. She realized that trading a broke ironworker for a broke handyman wasn't exactly a financial upgrade. She tried to cool things off. But Damien was in deep. He was in love. He was obsessed. He thought they were building a life together, not just a basement apartment. And here's where the story pivots from a domestic drama to a dark comedy of errors. Alicia had a problem, a husband she didn't want, a lover she couldn't shake, and a mountain of debt she couldn't climb. But she did have one asset, Omar. Omar Murray, responsible man that he was, had life insurance. 3 policies to be exact. Total value, nearly $900,000. Suddenly, the math changed. Alive, Omar was a source of income, but also a source of debt. Dead, Omar was a winning lottery ticket. He was worth nearly $1 million. For a couple drowning in bills, that kind of money doesn't just look like a lifeline, it looks like salvation. The plan that hatched between Alicia and Damien was not born of passion, but of calculation. It was the cold, hard arithmetic of greed. But they were not professional killers. They were a nurse and a handyman. Their first attempt at murder was so incompetent, it would have been funny if it weren't so terrifying. On the 6th of February 2013, a gunman, presumably hired or arranged by the pair, opened fire on Omar while he was outside the house. But the shooter missed. Omar, possessing the reflexes of a man who spent his life dodging swinging steel beams, sprinted into the house, screaming for his wife. "Somebody's shooting at me!" This botched hit had a very specific, very predictable consequence. It made Omar paranoid. He wasn't stupid. He knew he had been targeted. He started circling the block 3 times before parking his car, checking for tails. He bought a revolver, a .38 caliber insurance policy of his own, and in a move that must have made Alicia sweat through her nursing scrubs, he installed a state-of-the-art security camera system. He turned the townhouse into Fort Knox. Imagine the dinner table conversation after that. Omar, terrified, checking the locks, talking about how he's going to catch the guy who shot at him. And Alicia nodding sympathetically, passing the peas, knowing full well that the guy is her boyfriend and the motive is her bank account. The second attempt had to be different. It couldn't be a random drive-by. It had to be precise. It had to be an inside job. The 24th of February, 2013, a Sunday, the Lord's Day. Brownsville was quiet, or as quiet as it gets. Omar was being the good husband. He was going to the grocery store to buy ingredients for Sunday dinner. He kissed his wife, maybe patted the baby, and walked out the door around 12:15 p.m. As he drove away, he didn't notice the one detail that would seal his fate. The brand new security cameras, the ones he had spent hundreds of dollars on, the ones designed to prevent exactly what was about to happen, they were unplugged. The wires had been pulled, the electronic eyes were blind. At 12:17 p.m., 2 minutes after Omar left, Alicia picked up her phone. She didn't call her mother, she didn't call a friend, she texted Damien. The message was the digital equivalent of a starter pistol. He's gone. Minutes later, a dark sedan rolled onto the block. It was the clown car of death. Driving or coordinating was Damien. With him, or meeting him, was the hired muscle, Kirk Porteous. Kirk Porteous. If you looked up generic goon in the dictionary, you'd find his picture. A known gang member, a crip with a rap sheet, and a man whose price for a human life was shockingly low. The negotiated fee for the murder of Omar Murray, $3,500. And the kicker, he had only been paid $500 up front. $500. That's not even a new iPhone. That's a used PlayStation and a couple of games. Kirk was willing to commit a capital offense to take a father away from his child for a down payment that wouldn't cover a month's rent in the very house he was about to invade. At 12:43 p.m., the sedan returned to the house. The neighbor's surveillance camera, the one the conspirators forgot to account for, captured the scene. A tall man, unmistakably Damien, walked up to the front door. He didn't shimmy a lock. He didn't kick it in. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and walked in. It was the casual entry of a man who had been there 100 times before. Inside, the betrayal deepened. Damien didn't bring a weapon. He went into the house and retrieved Omar's own gun, the revolver Omar bought for protection. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. The tool of defense was weaponized by the enemy within. Damien handed the gun to Kirk. Then, they waited. When Omar returned from the store, likely carrying bags of groceries, thinking about what spices to put on the chicken, he walked into his foyer. The door closed behind him, and then the world ended. Kirk Porteous stepped out of the shadows. There was no speech, no dramatic monologue, just 3 shots. Bang, bang, bang. Omar Murray fell in his own hallway. The groceries scattered. The life bled out of him on the floor of the dream home that had become his tomb. Upstairs, Alicia waited for the echoes to fade. Then, she began her performance. She called 911. The recording is a masterclass in deception. She sounded terrified. She told the dispatcher she was hiding in the bedroom with the baby, that she had heard shots, that she didn't know if the gunman was coming up the stairs. "I'm scared," she whimpered. She locked the door. She played the part of the victim perfectly. Police raced to the scene. They found Omar, severely wounded but still breathing, a testament to his ironworker strength. They rushed him to Brookdale Hospital. Doctors worked feverishly, cracking open his chest, trying to repair the damage done by a $500 hitman. But it was too late. The damage was done. Omar Murray was pronounced dead. The detectives of the NYPD 73rd Precinct arrived at the house. These are men and women who have seen everything. They have seen crimes of passion, crimes of greed, and crimes of sheer stupidity. This one smelled like all three. First, there was the lack of robbery. The house wasn't tossed, the TV was there, the jewelry was there. Robbers generally rob, killers kill. This was a hit. Then, there were the cameras. The detectives saw the brand new system. Great, they thought. We'll have the whole thing on tape. Then they followed the wires. Unplugged, not cut. Unplugged. You don't unplug your own cameras when you're paranoid about being shot. But you do unplug them if you're about to let a killer into your house. The detectives started digging. They canvassed the neighborhood. In Brownsville, people don't usually talk to the police. It's an unwritten rule. Snitches get stitches. But cameras don't have a code of silence. They found the footage from the business across the street. They watched the dark sedan. They watched the tall man walk in with a key. They watched the shooter run out. It was all there. They brought Alicia in. At this point, she was still the grieving widow. They decided to test her. They showed her the video. Do you know these men, they asked? Alicia, in a moment of panic, or perhaps thinking she was smarter than she actually was, made a fatal error. She pointed to the tall man. I don't know the shooter, she said, but that guy, that's Damien Lavelle. He's the contractor. He's fixing the basement. And then she dropped the bomb, and we were having an affair. Why did she do it? Why admit to the affair? Perhaps she thought she could spin it. I'm a cheater, not a killer. She told the police that Damien was obsessed with her, that he was a stalker, that he must have killed Omar in a fit of jealous rage so he could have her all to himself. It was the fatal attraction defense reversed. She was the victim of a love so powerful it turned deadly. The police nodded, took notes, and then went to find Damien. Damien Lavelle was not ready for the pressure. When the detectives picked him up and put him in the box, he looked like a deer in the headlights of a semi-truck. They played the tape. They told him Alicia had ID'd him. They told him she said he was a stalker. The look on Damien's face must have been priceless. The woman he loved, the woman he killed for, the woman he was supposed to share the $900,000 with, had just thrown him under the bus. So, Damien did what any spurned lover facing life in prison would do. He sang. He sang like a canary. He told them everything. It wasn't my idea, he cried. It was hers. She told me to do it. She wanted the money. He laid it all out. The text messages, the planning, the fact that Alicia gave him the key, the fact that she supplied the gun. He told them about the first botched attempt. He told them about the insurance. He painted a picture of Alicia not as a victim, but as the puppet master, pulling his strings with promises of love and wealth. The police then scooped up Kirk Porteous. Kirk was a stone wall. I don't know no Alicia, he grunted, and he was telling the truth. He was the subcontractor. He didn't know the client. He only knew the foreman. I just did a job, he said, with the terrifying nonchalance of a man discussing a plumbing repair. When the money's right, I don't ask questions. But the police had enough. They had the texts. They had the timeline. They had the financial motive. They arrested Alicia Noel Murray. The trial was a circus. Damien took the stand against his former lover. He looked at her across the courtroom, the woman who had whispered sweet nothings to him in the dusty basement, and pointed the finger. Alicia took the stand in her own defense. It was a Hail Mary pass. She was calm, too calm. Cool as a cucumber, observers said. She looked like a robot. She denied everything. She claimed the text message at 12:17 p.m. wasn't a signal to kill. It was an invitation for a quickie. I just wanted him to come over for sex while Omar was at the store, she told the jury. The jury looked at her. They looked at the timeline. Omar was going to the grocery store. He would be back in 20 minutes. Who invites a lover over for a tryst in a 20-minute window, knowing the husband is just down the street buying paprika? It was a lie so transparent you could read a newspaper through it. It took the jury 2 hours to decide. Guilty. First-degree murder. At the sentencing, the judge looked at Alicia. She stood there, emotionless. No tears for Omar. No tears for her daughter, who was now effectively an orphan. Just a blank stare. The judge gave her life without parole. She would die in prison. Kirk Porteous, the discount hitman, got life. Damien Lavelle, the man who let love turn him into a monster, got 15 years. And the house? The house in Brownsville stands as a monument to the tragedy. It was meant to be a foundation for the future, but it became a tomb for the past. Omar Murray, the man who built skyscrapers, was brought down by the people closest to the ground. He died not because of the dangerous streets of Brownsville, but because of the dangerous desires of the people he invited into his home. It is a grim reminder that sometimes the most dangerous person in the world isn't the stranger with a gun, but the spouse with a calculator and a heart full of greed. The asphalt of Brownsville, Brooklyn, has a specific kind of memory. It holds on to the heat of the summer sun long after the sun has set, and it seems to hold on to the neighborhood's secrets with even greater tenacity. It is a place where the rhythm of life is often a syncopated beat of sirens, laughter, and the occasional terrifying percussion of gunfire. A neighborhood that demands a certain kind of resilience just to navigate the sidewalk. But in this concrete ecosystem, where survival is often the primary occupation, Omar Murray was something of a glorious anomaly. A man who wasn't just surviving the grind, but was actively mastering it. He was the kind of immigrant success story that politicians love to put in brochures, but rarely actually meet. A Jamaican powerhouse who arrived on American soil in 1995 at the tender age of 19, possessing little more than a suitcase full of optimism and a work ethic that could bend titanium. For nearly 2 decades, he had woken up before the pigeons, strapped on his boots, and gone to work as an iron worker, literally building the spine of the city that often forgot men like him existed. He was the guy who smiled with his entire face, a life of the party type whose laughter was a public utility, warming everyone in a 3-block radius. He was the dutiful son who took care of his mother, the protective older brother, the man who believed that if you just worked hard enough, the universe would eventually cut you a break. By 2013, it seemed the universe had finally decided to pay out. Omar had navigated the choppy waters of a failed first marriage with his dignity intact, a separation in 2007 that didn't end in a war, just a quiet retreat back to his mother's house to reset his compass. It was there, on the very block where he learned the rules of the street, that he spotted his second chance. Her name was Alicia Noel. She was 20 years old when they met. A registered nurse with a demeanor that suggested compassion and a smile that mirrored his own. To Omar, who was approaching his 40s, Alicia wasn't just a woman. She was a fountain of youth, a girl next door reality that felt like a dream. Their courtship was a whirlwind, conducted with the speed of 2 people, afraid the music was about to stop. They were engaged within 6 months, married in August 2010, and parents to a baby daughter shortly thereafter. They were the picture of upward mobility, culminating in the purchase of a $500,000 townhouse in Brownsville, a 2-family fortress, where they could live in the duplex and rent out the garden apartment to help wrestle the mortgage into submission. To the casual observer walking down the street, the Murrays were winning the game of life. They had the house, the baby, the careers, he in iron, she in nursing. But if you peeled back the vinyl siding of that townhouse, you wouldn't find insulation. You would find a festering mold of financial ruin. The American dream has a price tag, and the Murrays were shopping with money they didn't actually have. The mortgage was a hungry beast that was months behind on its feeding. The car payments were lagging. The credit cards were hyperventilating, maxed out to the limit, screaming for mercy. They were drowning in a sea of red ink, maintaining a facade of prosperity that was as thin as the drywall in their rental unit. And usually, when financial pressure cooks a marriage, it results in arguments about the electric bill or a quiet divorce. But in the Murray household, it turned into a noir thriller because Alicia decided to outsource her emotional needs to the help. Enter Damien Lavelle. If this were a casting call for a home wrecker, Damien would have been an unusual choice. He was the handyman hired to renovate the downstairs unit. But Damien offered more than just drywall installation and painting services. He offered a listening ear to a wife who felt neglected and needy. While Omar was out risking his life on high steel beams to pay for the roof over their heads, Alicia was downstairs in the dust and debris, flirting with the contractor. It started with conversation, moved to emotional intimacy, and quickly devolved into a full-blown physical affair conducted right under the unsuspecting nose of the husband upstairs. Alicia would later admit, with a staggering lack of self-awareness, that they would be intimate inside the house while Omar was home, a level of audacity that borders on the pathological. But affairs, much like shoddy construction work, eventually show cracks. And Alicia soon realized that trading a broke ironworker for a broke handyman wasn't exactly a financial upgrade. She tried to cool things off, but Damien was hooked. He was the classic lovelorn fool who thought they were building a life together, not just a basement apartment. Alicia, however, had done the math. She had a husband she didn't want, a lover she couldn't control, and a mountain of debt she couldn't climb. But she did have one asset. Omar Murray was worth more dead than alive. He carried 3 life insurance policies totaling nearly $900,000. To a couple drowning in bills, that kind of money doesn't just look like a lifeline. It looks like a winning lottery ticket stamped with a tombstone. The plan that hatched between the nurse and the handyman was not a crime of passion, but a cold calculation of greed. Their first attempt at murder was so incompetent, it would have been a comedy sketch if the stakes weren't life and death. On the 6th of February 2013, a gunman, presumably hired or arranged by the pair, opened fire on Omar while he was outside the house. But the shooter missed. Omar, possessing the reflexes of a man who spent his life dodging swinging steel beams, didn't freeze. He sprinted into the house, screaming for his wife, "Somebody's shooting at me!" The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. He was running for safety into the arms of the woman who had likely painted the target on his back. This botched hit had a very specific, very predictable consequence. It made Omar paranoid. He wasn't stupid. He knew he had been targeted. He started circling the block 3 times before parking his car to check for tails. He bought a revolver, a .38 caliber insurance policy of his own. And, most critically, he installed a state-of-the-art security camera system to turn his home into a fortress. Fast forward to Sunday, the 24th of February 2013, a chilly afternoon in Brownsville. The neighborhood was ticking along with its usual low-level tension. Omar was being the good husband, fulfilling his domestic duties by going to the grocery store to pick up ingredients for dinner. He left the house around 12:15 p.m., likely kissing his wife and daughter goodbye, completely unaware that he was walking out of a home and into a trap. As he drove away, he didn't notice the one detail that would eventually help seal his fate. The brand new security cameras, the ones he had spent hundreds of dollars on to prevent exactly what was about to happen, were unplugged. The wires had been pulled. The electronic eyes were blind. It was a detail that screamed inside job to anyone paying attention, because while a paranoid man might check his locks twice, he certainly doesn't unplug his own security system. At 12:17 p.m., just 2 minutes after Omar's car turned the corner, Alicia picked up her phone. She didn't call the police to report the cameras were broken. She didn't call her mother. She texted Damien. The message was simple, a digital signal flare. Omar was gone. Minutes later, a dark sedan rolled onto the block carrying the architects of Omar's demise. Inside or meeting the car was Damien, and with him was the hired muscle, Kirk Porteous. Kirk Porteous was not a criminal mastermind. He was a blunt instrument, a known gang member with a reputation as an enforcer and a price tag that was shockingly low. The negotiated fee for the murder of a human being, a father, a husband, $3,500. And the kicker? He had only been paid $500 up front. In the grim economy of contract killing, Omar Murray's life was being traded for the price of a used gaming console. Kirk was willing to commit a capital offense for a down payment that wouldn't even cover a month's rent in the very house he was about to invade. At 12:43 p.m., the sedan returned to the house. A neighbor's surveillance camera, the one the conspirators forgot to account for, captured the scene with grainy fidelity. A tall man, later identified as Damien, walked up to the front door. He didn't kick it in, he didn't pick the lock. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and walked in with the casual confidence of a man who owned the place. Because in a way, he did. He had the key to the house and the key to the wife. Inside, the betrayal deepened. Damien didn't bring a weapon. He went into the house and retrieved Omar's own gun, the revolver Omar had bought for protection after the first attempt. Damien handed the gun to Kirk. The trap was baited with the victim's own defense. When Omar returned from the store, likely carrying bags of groceries and thinking about what spices to put on the chicken, he walked into his foyer and into an ambush. Kirk Porteous was waiting. There were no words, no dramatic speeches, just the deafening roar of gunfire in the small entryway. Omar was shot 3 times in the chest. He collapsed, bleeding out on the floor of the dream home that had become his tomb. Upstairs, Alicia waited for the echoes to fade, and then she began her performance. She called 911. The recording is a masterclass in distress, or at least an attempt at it. She told the dispatcher she heard shots, that she was hiding in the bedroom with the baby, afraid the gunman was coming up the stairs. It was a compelling act. When police arrived, they found Omar clinging to life, but the wounds were too severe. He was rushed to Brookdale Hospital, but the ironworker's heart finally stopped beating. The detectives of the NYPD's 73rd Precinct are a cynical bunch who have seen it all, and they immediately sensed that the vibration at the crime scene was off. The home invasion theory had holes in it, large enough to drive a truck through. Nothing was stolen. The house wasn't tossed. Robbers generally want to rob. They don't just stop by to commit a murder and leave the flat screen TV. It looked like a hit. And when it looks like a hit, you look at the people standing in the rubble. Alicia was escorted to the hospital, playing the grieving widow. But back at the house, the crime scene investigators were finding the first loose thread of the sweater: the unplugged cameras. It was an omission that screamed intent. Why would a man terrified for his life leave his system disconnected? He wouldn't, but someone who knew he was coming home and didn't want the welcome wagon recorded, they certainly would. The investigation pivoted to the neighborhood. Detectives canvassed, knocking on doors, navigating the no-snitch culture of Brownsville, but technology is the silent witness that never forgets. They found the surveillance camera across the street, the one belonging to a business that actually kept its equipment plugged in. The footage was a revelation. It showed the timeline that contradicted the chaos. It showed the dark sedan. It showed the tall man walking in with the ease of a resident. It showed the shooter entering and fleeing. It showed a conspiracy in motion. Detectives brought Alicia in, not as a suspect initially, but to see if she could shed light on the mystery men. They showed her the video. They expected a blank stare. Instead, Alicia, perhaps thinking she could control the narrative by giving them a crumb, pointed at the screen. She didn't know the shooter, she said. But the tall man? That's Damien Lavelle, she admitted. He's doing some work on the house. And then the kicker, we've been having an affair. It was a bold strategy. By admitting to the infidelity, she perhaps hoped to distance herself from the murder. I'm a cheater, not a killer, was the subtext. She threw Damien under the bus, backed over him, and then parked on top of him. She told police about the affair, the sex while Omar was home, the emotional neediness. She painted Damien as the obsessed lover, the one who couldn't handle the rejection when she tried to break it off, implying he killed Omar to have her all to himself. But Damien Lavelle was not built for the interrogation room. When the detective sat him down and played the video, his confidence evaporated like steam. He saw himself. He saw the gig was up. And when they told him that Alicia, the woman he did this for, the woman he thought he was riding off into the sunset with, had identified him, the silence in the interrogation room was heavy with the sound of a heart breaking and a survival instinct kicking in. Damien flipped. He spilled everything. He admitted to hiring Kirk. He admitted to the money, the paltry $3,500, but he insisted with the desperation of a drowning man that it was all Alicia's idea. She was the one who wanted Omar gone. She was the one who supplied the gun. She was the one texting him the all clear. He was just the love-struck fool who followed orders. She told me to, he said, a sentence that stripped away the veneer of the romantic tragedy and revealed the cold, transactional nature of the crime. Police then snatched up Kirk Porteous. 5 days after the murder, they had the shooter. Kirk was a stone wall initially. I don't know any Alicia, he said, and he was telling the truth. He was the gig economy worker of murder. He dealt with the middleman. He didn't know the client. He just knew the target and the price. When the money's right, I don't ask any questions, he told them, a chilling epitaph for his own morality. But he confirmed Damien hired him. Now, the detectives had a problem. They had 2 men pointing fingers, but they needed to nail the grieving widow. It's hard to convict a woman on the word of her lover, accomplice. They needed hard evidence. They went back to the finances. The debt was the motive. The $900,000 life insurance policy was the goal. Alicia had already tried to claim it days after the murder. The ink on the death certificate was barely dry, and she was already reaching for the payout. It was greed, naked, and unashamed. But the smoking gun was digital. Detectives recovered the texts between Alicia and Damien. They weren't love notes. They were logistical updates. Are you gonna do it today? The timing of the text sent just after Omar left the house, 12:17 p.m., matched perfectly with the arrival of the hit team. It was coordination. It was conspiracy. In December 2015, Alicia Noel Murray was indicted. The trial, which began in May 2017, was a spectacle of betrayal. Damien took the stand as the prosecution's star witness, looking at the woman he killed for, the woman who was now sitting at the defense table claiming she was the victim. He detailed the plot, the failed first attempt, the gun handoff, the instructions. Alicia took the stand in her own defense, a high-risk maneuver that rarely pays off. She was cool, composed, cool as a cucumber, observers noted. She denied everything. She claimed the text messages were innocent. She was just inviting Damien over for a quickie while Omar was out. It was a laughable explanation. Who invites a lover over for sex minutes after their husband leaves to buy groceries, knowing he'll be back in 20 minutes? It defied logic. It defied physics. It was the desperate fabrication of a sociopath who thought she could charm a jury the way she charmed Damien. She admitted she was a bad wife. She admitted she was a cheater. But a killer? No, she insisted. That was all Damien. He was obsessed. He acted alone. The jury didn't buy the ticket she was selling. It took them only 2 hours to deliberate. In the world of complex murder trials, 2 hours is a lightning strike. It means there was no doubt. It means the story she spun didn't just have holes. It was entirely made of air. Alicia Noel Murray was convicted of first-degree murder. At sentencing, the mask finally slipped, or rather, it hardened. She showed no emotion, no tears for the husband she orchestrated the death of, no remorse for the daughter she effectively orphaned. She stood there like a robot. The judge, likely disgusted by the sheer calculation of the crime, the betrayal of the marital vow for an insurance check, threw the book at her. Life without parole. She would die in prison. Kirk Porteous, the trigger man who killed a stranger for $500, got life in prison. He was a blunt instrument of violence, and society locked him away in the toolbox. Damien Lavelle, the lovelorn fool who facilitated a murder for a woman who would later testify against him, got 15 years. Some might say he got off light. Others might say living with the knowledge that he was played so thoroughly is a prison of its own. He was a pawn who thought he was a king. The tragedy of Omar Murray is not just that he died, it is that he died for nothing. He wasn't killed for a great passion or a vendetta. He was killed because his wife wanted to clear her credit card debt and didn't want the hassle of a divorce. He was killed because he was worth more as a corpse than as a husband. In the aftermath, Omar's family was left to pick up the pieces. His mother, the woman he took care of, had to bury her son. His daughter, an innocent byproduct of a toxic union, would grow up raised by Omar's relatives, learning about her father through photographs and stories of his smile, his hard work, and his love. Brownsville continued to turn. The seasons changed. The house on the block, the one with the unplugged cameras and the tragic history, stood as a silent monument to the fragility of the American dream when it is built on a foundation of lies. The case of Omar Murray serves as a grim reminder to the detectives of the 73rd Precinct and to anyone paying attention. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the gang member on the corner or the robber in the night. Sometimes it's the person sleeping next to you, checking their watch, waiting for you to leave for groceries so they can text the contractor to come finish the job.